If you've never seen a 60-year-old woman wearing 2 pairs of sunglasses at the same time, one prescription pair nestled under a pair of oversized, rhinestone-encrusted drugstore aviators, standing on a sidewalk and screaming at a roof, then you clearly don't live in the Oak Creek estates. And you definitely haven't met Mrs. Higgins. I was standing in my driveway, holding a lukewarm mug of coffee that I hadn't even had a chance to sip yet, watching this spectacle unfold. It was 7:15 in the morning on a Tuesday. The Arizona sun was already making its presence known, climbing over the horizon with that specific kind of aggressive brightness that promised a day of 105 degrees. But the light hitting my roof wasn't blinding. It was just light. "It's an assault!" Mrs. Higgins shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at the top of my house. She was standing exactly 3 inches past the property line on the public sidewalk, because she knew that if she stepped onto my grass, I'd turn the sprinklers on. We had played that game before. "Jack, do you see this? Do you see what you're doing to the community?" I took a slow, deliberate sip of coffee. "Good morning, Mrs. Higgins. Lovely day for a tan. Are you yelling at the clouds again? Or is this specific to me?" "Don't you get smart with me, young man," she snapped, adjusting the outer layer of sunglasses. She looked like a bizarre insect. "It's those panels, those hideous industrial glass monstrosities you've plastered all over your roof. I tried to walk my poodle, Mittens, past your house, and I was nearly blinded. Blinded! It's like staring into the heart of a supernova." I looked down at Mittens, a dog that looked less like a poodle and more like a sentient ball of lint. Mittens was currently sniffing a fire hydrant, completely unbothered by the so-called supernova on my roof. "Mrs. Higgins," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "those are high-efficiency, monocrystalline solar panels. They're designed to absorb light, not reflect it. That's literally how they work. If they were reflecting all the light, they wouldn't be generating any power, and my electric bill wouldn't be $0. "I don't care about your electric bill," she shouted, stamping her foot. "I care about the aesthetic integrity of this neighborhood. I care about the retinas of our pilots flying overhead. Do you want to cause a plane crash, Jack? Is that it? Do you want a 747 landing in the community pool because you wanted to save a few pennies on AC?" "We are 50 miles from the nearest airport," I pointed out. "If a pilot is using the reflection off my roof to navigate, we have much bigger problems than my HOA compliance." She huffed, crossing her arms. "You'll be hearing from the board. This isn't over. I have a migraine coming on just looking at it. I can feel the glare burning through my UV protection." She spun on her heel and marched away, Mittens scrambling to keep up. I watched her go, sighing. I looked up at my roof. The panels were sleek, black, and modern. They sat flush against the shingles. They were beautiful. I had spent $30,000 on this system. It was my pride and joy. It was the only thing standing between my bank account and the extortionate summer rates of the local power company. I walked back inside, thinking that was the end of it. Just another morning temper tantrum from the president of the Homeowners Association. I was wrong. 3 days later, the certified letter arrived. I was working in the garage, tinkering with my table saw, when the mailman, Steve, walked up the driveway. Steve was a good guy. He wore his uniform shorts a little too high, but he knew everyone's business and usually gave me a heads up if a package looked broken. Today, he didn't look happy. He held out a thick envelope with the green certified mail sticker on it. "Sorry, Jack," Steve said, grimacing. "It's from the chaotic evil empire." "The HOA?" I asked, wiping sawdust off my hands. "The very same. I delivered one to the guy 3 streets over last week because his trash can was visible from the moon or something. He looked like he was going to cry. You got a pen?" I signed for it. The envelope felt heavy, heavy with malice. I waited until I was inside, sitting at the kitchen table with my wife, Sarah, before I opened it. Sarah was chopping vegetables for dinner, the rhythmic thud, thud, thud of the knife providing a tense soundtrack. "What is it?" she asked, not looking up. "It's a violation notice," I said, slicing the envelope open. I pulled out a stack of papers. It wasn't just a letter. It was a dossier. There were grainy photos of my house taken from the street. There were photos taken from what looked like a drone. There was a blurry photo of a bird flying near my roof. "Read it," Sarah said. I cleared my throat. "Dear homeowner, it has come to the attention of the Architectural Control Committee that you have installed unauthorized reflective surfaces on the southern exposure of your primary dwelling. These surfaces, identified as solar collection units, are in direct violation of Article 14, Section B, Subsection 2, Nuisance and Glare." I paused. Nuisance and glare? That section is about floodlights pointing into people's bedroom windows. "Keep reading," Sarah said, the knife stopping. "The board has determined that the reflective index of your solar panels exceeds the community standard for matte finishes. Multiple complaints have been filed regarding blinding glare affecting pedestrians and vehicular traffic." "Vehicular traffic?" Sarah asked. "We live in a cul-de-sac. The only traffic is the Amazon truck and Mrs. Higgins cruising for things to be angry about." "Furthermore," I continued, my blood pressure starting to tick upward, "the appearance of the panels disrupts the visual harmony of the neighborhood, creating an industrial eyesore that negatively impacts property values. You are hereby ordered to remove the non-compliant structures within 14 days. Failure to comply will result in a fine of $500 per day, retroactive to the date of installation." I did the math in my head. $500 a day. Retroactive to 2 months ago? "That's $30,000 in fines," I whispered. "They want to fine me the cost of the system." "They can't do that," Sarah said, putting the knife down. "State law protects solar installations. Remember? You checked." "I did check," I said, standing up and pacing the kitchen. "The Solar Rights Act says they can't unreasonably restrict solar energy. But there's a loophole. There's always a loophole. If they can prove it's a safety hazard or a nuisance, they can ban it. She's framing it as a safety hazard. She's claiming I'm blinding people." "So fight it," Sarah said. She picked up a slice of bell pepper and crunched it aggressively. "Go to the meeting tonight. Bring the specs. Bring the science. Embarrass her." "Oh, I'm going to do more than embarrass her," I said, grabbing the keys to my truck. "I'm going to bury her in physics." The monthly HOA meeting was held in the community center, a beige room with beige carpet and beige walls that smelled faintly of stale coffee and desperation. There were about 20 people there, mostly the usual suspects, retirees with nothing to do, and a few younger homeowners who looked like they were being held hostage. Mrs. Higgins sat at the center of the long table at the front of the room, flanked by the treasurer, a man named Bob who slept with his eyes open, and the secretary, Janice, who took notes so furiously I was worried her pen would catch fire. When the floor was opened for new business, I stood up. I didn't wait to be called on. I walked to the front of the room, holding the violation notice in one hand and a spec sheet in the other. "I'm here to appeal the violation regarding my roof," I announced. Mrs. Higgins peered over her reading glasses. She smiled, a tight, predatory stretching of lips that didn't reach her eyes. "Ah, Jack, we were expecting you. Please, keep it brief. We have a lot to discuss regarding the color of the mulch in the playground." "Brief," I repeated. "Sure. Here's the brief version. You're lying. My panels don't glare. They are anti-reflective coated tempered glass. They reflect less than 2% of the light that hits them. Standard asphalt shingles reflect more than that when they're wet." I slapped the spec sheet onto the table in front of her. "That is the manufacturer's data. It proves, scientifically, that my roof is less reflective than the windshield of your Cadillac, Mrs. Higgins. Are you going to ban your own car?" A few people in the audience chuckled. Mrs. Higgins did not chuckle. She didn't even look at the paper. She just brushed it aside as if it were a gum wrapper. "Data sheets are all well and good in a laboratory, Jack," she said condescendingly, "but we live in the real world, and in the real world I have sworn affidavits from 3 neighbors who say the glare is unbearable." "3 neighbors?" I scanned the room. "Name them." "I will not," she said. "They wish to remain anonymous to avoid retaliation. You seem like a volatile man." "Volatile? I'm an accountant." "Regardless," she waved her hand dismissively. "The board has voted. The panels are a nuisance. They are ugly. They look like oily glass. They don't match the earth tones of the neighborhood. The bylaws clearly state that all roofing materials must be uniform, non-reflective, and consistent with the architectural style of the development." "So that's it?" I asked, feeling the heat rise in my neck. "I spent 30 grand to go green, and you're forcing me to tear it down because you don't like the way it looks?" "It's not just the look, Jack," Janice, the secretary, chimed in, looking up from her notebook. "It's the glare. We have to protect the community. What if a child is riding a bike and gets blinded and hits a tree? Can you live with that on your conscience?" "A child?" I stared at her. "The panels are on the roof. Unless the child is hang gliding, they aren't seeing the reflection." "The ruling stands," Mrs. Higgins said, banging her gavel. It was a small wooden gavel, but she wielded it like Mjolnir. "You have 10 days left to remove them, or the fines begin. And don't think you can replace them with different panels. No glass, no shiny surfaces. We want a roof that is dark, matte, and completely non-reflective. Do you understand?" I stood there for a long moment. The room was silent. I looked at Mrs. Higgins, smug and victorious in her polyester blouse. I looked at Bob, who was now snoring softly. I looked at the neighbors, who were looking at their shoes, glad it wasn't them in the crosshairs. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "You want me to remove the solar panels?" "Yes," she said, "and you want me to replace the roofing material with something else?" "Correct." "And your specific criteria are that it must be dark, matte, and non-reflective?" "Yes," she sighed, clearly bored. "We want it to blend in. We want it to be dark. We want zero glare. As long as it meets those criteria, no shine, dark color, we don't care what brand of shingle you use. Just make it go away." "Dark," I repeated. "No shine. Zero glare." "Is there an echo in here?" Mrs. Higgins asked. "Yes. Pitch black if you have to. Just stop the reflection." Something clicked in my brain. It was the sound of a mental tumblers falling into place. It was the sound of malicious compliance shifting into gear. "Okay," I said. I picked up my violation notice. "I'll take them down." Mrs. Higgins looked surprised. She had expected more of a fight. "You will?" "Absolutely," I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had just realized he could legally burn the world down. "You're right, Mrs. Higgins. The glare is the problem. I'll solve the glare. I'll give you exactly what you asked for. A roof that is dark, matte, and absorbs every single photon of light that hits it. You won't see a single ray of sunshine coming off my house." "Good," she sniffed, turning back to her papers. "See that you do. Next item, the unauthorized use of pink flamingos on lawn number 42. I walked out of the community center with a spring in my step. I didn't go home immediately. I sat in my truck in the parking lot and pulled out my phone. I didn't search for roofers. I searched for industrial thermal control. I searched for high emissivity metals. I searched for materials used to melt snow on warehouses in the Arctic. I wasn't just going to replace my roof. I was going to weaponize it. The next morning I didn't go to work. I called in sick. I had a project to manage. I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh pot of coffee and a directory of local contractors. I needed a specific kind of contractor. I didn't need a guy who slapped down asphalt shingles. I needed a guy who worked with metal. I needed a guy who didn't ask too many questions, or better yet, a guy who asked the right questions. I found him on the 3rd page of Google results. Big Tony's Custom Metal and Roofing. The reviews were a mix of "Tony is a genius" and "Tony scared my cat," which seemed promising. I called the number. "Yeah, this is Tony," a voice rumbled. It sounded like he was gargling gravel. "Tony, my name is Jack. I have a job for you, but it's weird." "I like weird," Tony said. "Weird usually pays cash. What you got, copper? Zinc? You want a turret? I did a turret for a guy once, looked like a castle." "No turret," I said. "I need a standing seam metal roof, but I need a specific finish. I need it black. Not just black, I need it dead black. Mate. Industrial grade. The kind of stuff that has zero reflectivity." There was a silence on the line. "You talking about Kynar 500 matte finish? Or something heavier? You want that textured steel they use on barns up north?" "The barn stuff," I said. "The stuff designed to absorb heat to melt ice dams." "Buddy," Tony said, and I could hear the confusion in his voice. "You're in Arizona. You put that on your roof, you're gonna bake. That steel acts like a radiator. It grabs the sun and holds it. You put a black matte metal roof on a house in this zip code, your attic is gonna be a sauna. Your AC unit is gonna file for divorce." "I know," I said, "that's the point." "The point? I have an HOA problem, Tony. They told me my solar panels were too shiny. They ordered me to install a roof that is dark, non-reflective, and matte. They specifically said they didn't care what it was, as long as it didn't glare." Tony laughed. It was a deep, booming sound that probably rattled his phone. "Oh, I see. You want to cook 'em." "I want to comply with the bylaws," I corrected him, maliciously. "I'm on my way," Tony said. "I'll bring the color swatches. We're gonna find you a black so deep it looks like a hole in the universe." Tony arrived an hour later. He was a mountain of a man, easily 6'5", wearing a sleeveless shirt that revealed arms the size of tree trunks. He drove a truck that looked like it had survived a war zone. He hopped out, carrying a heavy binder. We stood in the driveway, looking up at the solar panels. "Shame," Tony said, shaking his head. "Good system. Clean install. Your HOA president must be a real piece of work." "She wears 2 pairs of sunglasses," I said. "Say no more." Tony opened the binder on the hood of his truck. He flipped past the nice grays and browns and landed on the back page. "All right, here's the nuclear option. This is Midnight Matte. It's a heavy-gauge steel with a granular finish, zero gloss. It doesn't reflect light. It eats it. It's rated for snow loads in Minnesota. It's designed to get hot enough to slide ice off in a blizzard." "What happens when you put it in 110-degree desert heat?" I asked. Tony grinned. "It becomes a thermal battery. It'll hit a surface temp of maybe 170, 180 degrees by noon. The heat won't just go down into your house. It'll radiate out. It'll create a thermal bloom. Anyone standing within 20 feet of your house is gonna feel it." "Is it legal?" I asked. "Totally," Tony said. "It's a standard roofing material, rated for residential use. It's fireproof, hailproof, and completely within code. Your HOA bylaws say metal roofs permitted?" "They do," I said. I had checked that morning. Article 5 allowed for architectural metal as long as it was an approved earth tone or neutral color. "Black is a neutral," Tony said, tapping the swatch, "and it definitely ain't shiny. You hire me, we rip those panels off tomorrow. We put this black death metal up by Friday. It'll cost you about half of what those panels did, but I'm guessing this isn't about money anymore." "No," I said, looking at Mrs. Higgins's house next door. Her windows were open. Her prized hydrangeas were blooming right along the fence line, just 10 feet from my exterior wall. It's an investment in community warmth. I like you, Jack, Tony said, extending a hand the size of a catcher's mitt. Let's turn up the heat. The demolition began on a Thursday. It was loud. Tony and his crew didn't believe in quiet work. They ripped the solar panels off with a speed that was heartbreaking to watch, but necessary for the greater good. Mrs. Higgins came out to watch, standing in her usual spot on the sidewalk, arms crossed, looking triumphant. "Finally seeing reason, I see," she shouted over the noise of power drills. I walked over to her. "Yes, ma'am. You win. No more glare. The contractor is installing the new roof starting tomorrow. It meets all your specifications." "Good," she said, nodding. "I assume you chose a nice, tasteful charcoal shingle?" "Better," I said. "I went with a custom architectural metal, matte finish, the darkest color they had, just like you said, pitch black." "Metal?" She wrinkled her nose. "Well, as long as it isn't shiny, I don't want to see my face in it." "Trust me, Mrs. Higgins," I said. "You won't see anything in this roof. It's going to be very absorbing." By Friday afternoon, the new roof was on. It was shocking. Tony hadn't been lying. The midnight matte was intensely, aggressively black. It looked like someone had used the Photoshop paint bucket tool to dump a void onto my house. It didn't shimmer in the sun. It just sat there, a dark, brooding monolith. The visual effect was immediate. The house looked smaller, heavier. It looked like the headquarters of a supervillain. But the physical effect? That took about 24 hours to really kick in. Saturday morning broke clear and hot. The forecast was for 102 degrees. By 10 a.m., I stepped out onto my front porch to check the mail. As soon as I opened the door, I felt it. It wasn't just the ambient heat of the desert. It was a radiant, oppressive wave of thermal energy rolling off the roof above me. It felt like opening an oven door to check on a turkey. I walked out to the driveway. The air around my house shimmered. You know that haze you see on the highway in the distance on a hot day? That was happening in my front yard. The heat waves were visible. Tony's crew had done a great job insulating the attic. Tony had insisted on double R value insulation because he didn't want me to die. So the inside of my house was cool. My AC was humming loudly, working hard but holding steady. But outside? Outside was a different story. I saw my neighbor, Dave, walking his dog on the other side of the street. He stopped and stared at my roof. "Hey, Jack!" he yelled. "House looks dark!" "Thanks, Dave. Compliant with the bylaws," I yelled back. "Is it me?" Dave shouted, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Or is it hotter over there?" "Global warming, Dave," I waved. Mrs. Higgins didn't come out until noon. By then, the sun was directly overhead, hammering down on the midnight matte steel. The roof was doing exactly what Tony promised. It was drinking the sunlight, converting it into pure heat, and blasting it outward in a radius of destruction. I was watching from my living room window, peeking through the blinds like a paranoid spy. Mrs. Higgins stepped out her back door to water her garden. Her garden ran along the side of her house, separated from my house by a 6-foot wooden fence and a narrow strip of grass. The distance from my roofline to her flower bed was maybe 12 feet. She walked out in her sun hat, hose in hand. She took 3 steps toward the fence and stopped. She faltered. It looked like she had walked into a physical wall. She fanned her face. She looked up at the sky, confused. It was hot everywhere, sure, but in that specific corridor between our houses, the temperature was easily 10 to 15 degrees hotter than the ambient air. It was a heat trap. She sprayed her flowers. I watched with morbid fascination. The water hit the hydrangeas, and I swear I could almost see the steam rise. The plants looked unhappy. They were wilting. They were being slow cooked. She finished quickly and retreated inside, slamming her sliding glass door. Phase 1 was complete. The roof was up. The heat was on. Now, I just had to wait for the physics to do the rest. Monday brought the first casualty. I came home from work, I had actually gone in that day, to find a note on my door. It wasn't from the HOA, it was from the mailman, Steve. "Jack, I'm not walking up your driveway anymore. I felt my shoes melting. I'm leaving your mail in the box at the curb. What the hell did you do?" "Steve." I chuckled and walked inside. The house was cool. Thank God for modern air conditioning, though I dreaded the electric bill. But the sacrifice was worth it. I went to the kitchen window to check on the battlefield. Mrs. Higgins's yard looked rough. Her grass, usually a manicured carpet of emerald green, was turning a sickly shade of yellow near our shared fence. The hydrangeas were gone. They were brown, crispy skeletons. The heat radiating off my roof was creating a microclimate of death in her side yard. I saw her out there, inspecting the damage. She was poking a dead bush with a stick. She looked furious. She looked up at my house, her eyes narrowing. She couldn't claim glare. There was no glare. The roof was a black hole. But she knew. She knew it was me. A banging on my front door interrupted my surveillance. I knew who it was before I opened it. "What have you done?" Mrs. Higgins screamed the moment the latch clicked. Her face was flushed, her hair frizzy from the humidity and heat. "It is 110 degrees in my backyard. 110. "Is it?" I asked, stepping out onto the porch and immediately sweating. "My phone says it's only 98. Must be a localized pressure system." "Don't give me that weather mumbo-jumbo." She pointed a shaking finger at my roof. "It's that monstrosity. It's like a radiator. My flowers are dead. My patio furniture is too hot to sit on. The plastic webbing on my lawn chairs melted, Jack. Melted." "Oh, that's terrible," I said, putting on my best sympathy face. "But Mrs. Higgins, I did exactly what you asked. Look at it." I gestured to the roof. "Is it shiny?" "No," she seethed. "Is it light-colored?" "No." "Does it glare?" "No, it burns." "Well," I shrugged, "the bylaws don't say anything about temperature output. They only regulate appearance. You asked for dark, matte, and non-reflective. That is the darkest, mattest, non-reflectivest roof in existence. I think you should be thanking me for my compliance." "I'm calling the police!" she shrieked. "This is an assault! You are assaulting me with heat!" "Go ahead," I said. "I'll be here, staying hydrated." She stormed off. I went inside and turned the thermostat down another degree. She actually did call the police. About an hour later, a squad car rolled up. I saw the lights flashing through the window. I walked out to meet them. It was Officer Miller. I knew him vaguely. He had responded to a noise complaint at my house 3 years ago when I was watching the Super Bowl too loudly. He looked tired. He stepped out of the car, walked halfway up the driveway, and stopped. He took off his hat and wiped his forehead. "Sir," Officer Miller said, "is there a fire?" "No, officer," I said. "It feels like a fire," he said, squinting at my house. "Mrs. Higgins called. She said you're running a commercial smelting operation or a meth lab. She said the heat coming off your property is, and I quote, demonic." "It's just the roof, officer," I explained. "I recently replaced it to comply with HOA regulations." Mrs. Higgins came running out of her house, waving her arms. "Arrest him! Arrest him for public endangerment! Look at my hydrangeas! Look at them! They're crispy critters!" Officer Miller looked at the dead flowers. Then he looked at my black roof. Then he looked at the sun. "Ma'am," Miller said, "it's hot out. We live in a desert." "Not this hot," she screamed. "Walk over there. Go stand by the fence." Miller sighed. He walked over to the fence line between our houses. He stood there for about 5 seconds. He stepped back quickly. Whoa, okay. Yeah, that's toasty. He walked back to me. Jack, what is that material? It's architectural steel, officer. Matte black. Totally legal. I have the permit right here. I pulled the permit out of my back pocket. I had been carrying it everywhere. And here is the letter from the HOA demanding I install a dark, non-reflective roof. Miller read the letter. He read the permit. He looked at the roof. He looked at Mrs. Higgins. A slow grin spread across his face. He was a man who understood the petty tyranny of HOAs. Mrs. Higgins, Miller said, handing the papers back to me. This man is in full compliance with your request. He has a permit. The material is legal. There is no crime here. But the heat, she wailed. It's unbearable. Then I suggest you stay inside, Miller said. Or maybe plant some cacti. They like the heat. This is dereliction of duty, she shouted. I'm calling the fire department. It's a fire hazard. Go ahead, Miller said, getting back in his car. But if they charge you for a false alarm, don't call me. The fire department did show up 20 minutes later. A big red truck lumbered into the cul-de-sac. The guys got out, looking confused. The captain, a guy named Rodriguez, walked up with a thermal imaging camera. He pointed it at my roof. Holy mother, Rodriguez muttered. Hey, Jack, what you got up? There, reactor core. Just black steel, Captain, I yelled. I'm reading surface temps of... He checked the screen. 185 degrees, damn. You could fry an egg on that. You could fry a steak on that. Is it a hazard? Mrs. Higgins asked hopefully, hovering near the fire truck. Is it going to burn the neighborhood down? Rodriguez shook his head. No, ma'am. Metal doesn't burn. And unless his house frame is made of kindling, it's safe. It's just really hot. Don't touch it, and maybe don't stand next to it for too long. But my comfort, Mrs. Higgins cried. Not a fire department issue, ma'am, Rodriguez said, climbing back into the truck. Have a nice day. Stay cool. The victory was sweet, but the war wasn't over. The turning point came 3 days later. It wasn't just Mrs. Higgins anymore. The heat island effect was spreading. The asphalt on the street in front of my house had softened to the point where the garbage truck left deep, permanent tire tracks in the road. My other neighbor, Dave, the nice one, came over. He looked miserable. Jack, he said, standing at my door, I gotta talk to you. What's up, Dave? My AC unit, he said. It's on the side of the house facing yours. It's sucking in that superheated air coming off your roof. It can't keep up. It's running 24/7. My electric bill is going to be $400 this month. My kids are sleeping in the basement. I felt a pang of guilt. Dave was collateral damage. And, Dave continued, the plastic siding on the side of my house is starting to warp. It looks like Dali painting. I'm sorry, Dave, I said, truly, but Mrs. Higgins wanted this. She demanded it. I know, Dave said. His eyes hardened. I know she did. I saw the letter. And that's why I'm not mad at you, Jack. I'm mad at her. And so is everyone else. Everyone? Yeah. The pavement is sticky. The ambient temp in the cul-de-sac is 5 degrees higher than the next street over. We're living in a pizza oven because she didn't like your solar panels. We're calling a meeting. Tonight. The emergency HOA meeting was held in the same beige room, but this time, the AC in the community center was broken. It was stiflingly hot inside, a poetic justice that I appreciated. The room was packed. Every homeowner in the cul-de-sac was there. And they were sweating. And they were angry. Mrs. Higgins sat at the front, looking haggard. Her hair was flat. She was fanning herself with a file folder. Order, she said weakly. I call this meeting to order. Cut the crap, Linda, Dave shouted from the back. Fix Jack's roof. Excuse me? She bristled. Jack's roof is his problem. He installed it. You ordered him to, another neighbor yelled. I read the minutes. You told him to make it black. You told him you didn't care about anything else. Well, now my vinyl fence is melting, Linda. Who's going to pay for that?" "It's an eyesore," Mrs. Higgins argued, but her voice was losing its power. "The solar panels were an eyesore." "The solar panels didn't raise my utility bill," Dave yelled. "The solar panels didn't turn the street into a tar pit. We want the heat gone. We want the roof gone." Mrs. Higgins looked at the mob. She looked at me. I was sitting in the front row, cool as a cucumber, mostly because I had pre-gamed with a cold shower and an ice pack down my shirt. "Jack," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Jack, surely you agree this is untenable." "I don't know," I said, leaning back. "I'm getting used to it. It's cozy, and I've really been enjoying the privacy since no one can physically walk on my sidewalk without heat stroke." "What will it take?" she asked. It was a surrender. Complete and total. I stood up. I had prepared a list. "Here are my terms," I said, pulling a piece of paper from my pocket. "Terms?" she scoffed. "You don't get to make terms." "I think he does." The crowd roared. I cleared my throat. 1. I will remove the metal roof. A sigh of relief went through the room. 2. The HOA will pay for the removal of the metal roof and the reinstallation of the roofing material of my choice. Mrs. Higgins turned pale. "That's expensive." 3, I continued, ignoring her. "I will reinstall my solar panels, the exact same ones, and the HOA will sign a variance granting me a permanent, irrevocable easement for them, regardless of glare or aesthetic harmony." "But," she started. 4, I said, raising my voice. "The HOA will compensate my neighbors, Dave and whoever else suffered property damage, for their melted siding and fences." "We don't have the budget for that," Bob the treasurer woke up to shout. "Then raise the dues," I said, "or maybe cut the budget for mulch consulting." "Is that it?" Mrs. Higgins whispered. She looked defeated. "One more thing," I said. "I want a formal apology, in the newsletter, written by you, acknowledging that solar energy is a valuable addition to our community and that you were wrong to block it." The room held its breath. Mrs. Higgins looked at her neighbors. She looked at the sweat dripping down their faces. She looked at the angry glares. "Fine," she hissed. "Fine, just get that infernal black metal off the house." "I'll call Tony in the morning," I said. The breakdown of the black roof took 2 days. Tony was laughing the whole time. He made a fortune off me that month, installing it, removing it, and then putting a standard shingle roof back on, paid for by the HOA checkbook. The solar panels went back up the following week. They gleamed in the sun. They were shiny. They were modern. And to me, they were the most beautiful things in the world. Mrs. Higgins didn't come out to watch the reinstallation. In fact, Mrs. Higgins didn't come out much at all anymore. 2 weeks after the heat wave incident, a for sale sign appeared on her lawn. Rumor had it she was moving to a condo in Florida, where the building management handled everything, and she wouldn't have to look at any solar panels. The temperature in the cul-de-sac dropped back to normal. The asphalt hardened. Dave replaced his siding, on the HOA's dime, and invited me over for a BBQ. As I sat on my porch that evening, sipping a cold beer under the shade of my beautiful energy-generating roof, I watched the sun go down. It reflected off my panels, casting a brilliant golden glare right onto the for sale sign in Mrs. Higgins's yard. It was the most beautiful glare I had ever seen. I pulled out my phone and opened the HOA newsletter that had just been emailed out. There, on page 1, was a small, begrudging paragraph. Correction. The board acknowledges that the previous ruling regarding solar installations was in error. Solar panels are permitted and encouraged. We apologize for any inconvenience caused by the recent roofing dispute. I smiled, took a sip of beer, and closed the email. Sometimes you have to burn the village to save it, or in my case, You just have to turn your house into a toaster until the village begs you to stop. Malicious compliance isn't just a hobby, it's a science, and in Arizona, it's a thermal event.